today I'm going to show you how to make a photo transfer on a piece of tile. Really, you can use any type of tile. I even have brick that I have coated with a little bit of white. I kind of whitewashed it to lighten it up. But you could use wood. You could use really anything to transfer an image onto. So these are a few that I've made previously. I just wanted to point out when you do a image transfer, what happens is you're actually going to be removing any white part of the image, and so anything that's white in the original image is going to show the color of the tile through. So like in this one here, the white sky is actually kind of beige now. If I were to have like white skin or white dress, that would actually look the color of the tile. So like this one here, it didn't really have a lot of contrast because I started with a really dark stone. So that's why moving forward, I decided to kind of whitewash the brick before applying my photo transfer. So the first thing you want to do is choose a picture that you think will suit the tile. I also want to point out some of the tiles have a lot of little divots and grooves in them, so you want to keep that in mind when you're choosing the piece of tile and depending on the image you're choosing. I like to choose like landscapes and architecture and things like that because it doesn't necessarily put a groove or divot in someone's face. If it were a portrait, you know, it can be distracting if you have like bubbles and stuff in the face. So you definitely want to consider that as well. So consider the picture you're choosing. The white areas will disappear and show the tile color through it, so keep that in mind. And then keep in mind some of the bubbled or dented areas are going to show through in your picture. So first I'm going to measure the surface of the object that I'm using for my photo transfer. So for this one, this tile that I'm using is going to be about 6 inches by a little under 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead in Photoshop and crop my image to the size of this tile so that it fits perfectly. So I have my image open up in Photoshop. So I need to go over to the crop tool. And up at the top, I want to put in width times height times resolution. So like I said, my image was 6 inches wide, so I want to put IN for inches, by 3 inches. And then you have to put 300 pixels per square inch. Otherwise, it's not going to print exactly the right size. So I'm just going to grab this. This looks about right, and I have to decide what I want to include. I'm going to hit enter, or I can hit the check mark if enter doesn't work. And so now it's cropped my image. I will also go in and do some adjustments here to lighten or brighten and things like that. So I can make whatever adjustments I need to there. Now I have to keep in mind that white background is going to turn out kind of beige like the color of my tile. So at this point, if you are hooked up to a computer, you can print it. Or you can send it to me and I'll print it if you're not hooked to a computer. So I'm going to get off the crop tool. Sometimes that locks up the screen. And I'm going to go to print. And I just want to show you, if you are printing this, you have to print it in a laser printer. You can't use like a home printer unless it's like a high-end laser printer. Otherwise the inks won't stick for this. So for this, I just want to make sure that this is printed. I don't scale it or fit it to the page, because when I crop in Photoshop at a 300 resolution, it should put it exactly the right size on the page, but as soon as I click a button like scale to fit media or something, it'll change it completely. So just make sure you leave it to its original sizes, and then I'm just going to print it, or you can send it to me and I will do the same for you. Okay, so I have my image printed. And usually I just check to make sure that it's the correct size, which it is. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this with this clear leveling gel by Golden. And what this is going to do is it's going to create this kind of sticky plastic layer, shiny plastic layer, I should say. And the ink from the printer is going to stick to it. So essentially I'm like kind of creating a sticker. So I don't want too much on my brush. Just enough to coat it, but I do want to make sure that I get an even coat. So I'm going to go horizontally back and forth. and just coat this. If you do too much, your paper will start to get really wrinkly, but if you do too little, you're gonna see, I kind of look at it from different angles to make sure I got it all. So I don't want it to be globby, just a smooth, even coat, and I kind of want to go off the edge of the picture, probably like at least a ½ inch or so, to make sure that it doesn't get really thin and tear when I'm done. So I'm going to do one coat this way, then I'm going to let this dry. It usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So after this is no longer tacky to the touch, I'm going to go in and do one more coat in the opposite direction. Make sure to go off the edge of the photo a little. And you can see it did wrinkle a little bit, but that's okay. Now, before you do anything else with this, after you're done coating this, you kind of really want it to dry out and no longer be damp on the back side of this paper. So oftentimes I just have students leave it overnight before they go on to the second part of this. And this will really, really harden quickly on your brush, so you want to make sure that you wrap this up in between coats. Just put it in some plastic or rinse your brush. But now I'm just going to leave it. I've got a coat on from left to right and from up and down, and I'm just going to leave it to totally dry out. So after your image with the gel medium has dried with the 2 coats, you will see that it's very shiny, and the back should be completely dry before you're going to submerge it in water. And you'll see it will start to look a little bit transparent. But basically, you're just going to soften the paper so that you can peel it away to just leave behind the ink that will have stuck to the gel medium. So essentially, you're going to have like a little thin coat, like almost like a sticker with your image on it when this is done. So after a couple of minutes, you just want to make sure that you have a lot of paper towel lying around. And I like to kind of pull off the excess paper. Make sure you don't tear your transfer, because that can happen really easily. And I'm just going to move this, and I'm going to set my transfer upside down, face down, on the tabletop. And then you're just going to start peeling away the paper off the back. So I just go in very softly with my thumb and start peeling this away. You want to peel from the center out so that you don't tear the edges. So, and it's going to feel like you're all done, but a lot of times there's a little bit of white residue of paper still left on there that you want to just soak again and peel off again. So you just want to gently do this, get it all the way off the edge. That's why when you added the gel medium, you painted a little off the edge. So you can see this still has like a little bit of residue, so I want to get it off completely. And sometimes it's hard to tell in the lighter areas where that is, so I'm just going to dip this again to get this little paper residue off. I'm just going to wipe the area so the little crumbs don't interfere. So I'm just dipping it again. And you can see now all the little pieces that are still stuck on there. Just going to slowly, carefully peel them away. So you want to get all that paper residue off. You don't want any chunks of paper left behind. So I'm not worrying about the edges that I tore away. I just want to make sure that on my transfer on the photo that there's no paper left. And you can see I just tore this just a little, but that's okay. So be careful not to tear. Okay, I'm going to rinse this one more time just to get all the little paper crumbles off. Okay, so at this point it should be looking quite transparent, and you want to have some paper towel around so you can really blot it dry. So I'm just ignoring the kind of paper left on the edges, and as long as it's all clear off of my photo, you should be good. Be careful, it's very delicate, so it will tend to rip if you're not careful. So mine tore a little bit on the edge. I also didn't wait overnight to let this dry, so it's a little more fragile. Okay, so I have my transfer here with the paper peeled away from it. And now I'm just going to use my paintbrush with the same gel medium, and we're just going to do a very thin coat, not a lot, just enough to completely cover it. So I want to kind of get the edges, and it dries really quickly. If you have a lot of crevices, I try to like dab into the little grooves and get it in there. You don't want any puddles, and if you have any grooves, you don't want it puddled up in there. So just enough to completely cover it. And then you're going to take your photo transfer shiny side up. Move this over. And you're just going to kind of lay it on your tile. And now you have to just make sure that it goes off the edge of the tile so you don't have like a harsh line. And it will kind of stretch. So usually what I do is I kind of lift up, try to get all the air bubbles out. And I mean, these have a tendency to kind of wear off and peel away in little areas, and that's okay. And I could have trimmed some more of this paper off before I did this. Because I didn't wait overnight, mine is a little bit cloudy, but it will kind of, the cloudiness will go away as it dries. So I just don't want a lot of glue underneath because you'll get these like really globby areas, kind of puddles of bubbles underneath of the gel medium, and you don't want that. So this is kind of tacky, so you don't want to leave it face down on a surface for a couple days at least. So don't turn it upside down and leave it there for a long period of time. Don't put things on top of it for a while. So you can see I had my little crack there. It's now, you know, pretty disguised. I like to even like push some of these bubbles into them. Like I really push that down throughout, like a couple times as it dries. I try to like make those bubbles clear. You could even, so now you have an X-Acto knife. Use that X-Acto knife. You could even poke a little like hole or X in these areas and push that down in there as well. Might need like if you want some of the holes to show through. Push that down. I used red ink, so that's probably not the smartest thing. But okay, so I like to have it kind of go off the edges. And then when I'm completely done, you're going to carefully kind of put this face down. And actually, I'll have some cardboard available for you. You don't want to cut on the table surface. So we'll set this down. And then I'm just going to peel with my X-Acto. I'm going to cut along the edge. Sometimes this gets a little gunked up. You want to be careful because it will stretch and tend to tear. So just try to use a very sharp blade and cut away the excess. Here we go. And then you can do additional trimming if you want to. I just like to push this down. Sometimes I even put a little more of the gel medium on my fingers so I can get like the edges really nicely, almost like smush them into the edge so it becomes like one with the tile. So if these peel up as it dries, I just go ahead and put a little glue on my finger and I just brush it down. You don't want to get this glue on your clothes because it will stay stuck. It turns to kind of like a plastic. But just wash your hands when you're done and it should come off. So a couple of these edges that are sticking up, I'm just putting a little glue on my finger and pressing it down. Checking for air bubbles. I'm just kind of pushing them out if I see any. And then I'm just going to let this dry at least overnight. It'll start to harden up over the next couple days. It does take a little while to get completely kind of cured. So, and that is my finished tile transfer.